This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Hello friends, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I make videos about sewing, crochet and other crafts, and I love sharing my learning process with you. Today I'm going to try to recreate one of my favorite sweaters using crochet. In some of my recent videos, I've been wearing this green sweater I bought years ago. Many of you asked me about it, but unfortunately I don't have a link to share. It's no longer available. So I thought it could be a nice challenge to try recreating using crochet, going from this to this. Be aware that I'm not a pattern maker, but I'm going to try my best at showing the step-by-step process of making this sweater, but also showing you how I approach recreating a garment. So let's start. The original sweater seems to be knitted and sewn in separate pieces, so making it with crochet won't be an exact replica. Still, I want to get as close as possible while keeping the process simple and accessible, especially for those of you who are still learning how to crochet. I will be avoiding complicated stitches, shaping or tricky increases and decreases. I've only made one crochet sweater before, my Astur sweater. I designed and crocheted it during a band trip and it's still one of my favorite handmade pieces. I do have a free pattern for that one on my website in case you're interested. For the new sweater, I want to create it freely first and really test it. Because of that, I've decided to release the first version of the pattern for free, following the link in the description. This early version is meant for those of you who enjoy experimenting and don't mind small adjustments along the way. My goal is to get real feedback from people actually making the sweater. What works well, what feels confusing, and what could be improved. Over time, I will use that feedback to refine the pattern, make it clearer and more polished. But for now, this is very much a shared learning process, and you're warmly invited to be part of it. I chose a yarn that felt as close as possible to the original, warm, soft and with a bit of structure, but in a different color. Now that I have an idea of the yarn and the different pieces, it's time to choose a crochet stitch. I want it to have the look of knitting, but I also want to keep it simple, so I've decided to use this stitch. It's called half double crochet slip stitch back loop only. This creates a braided effect and it's very stretchy. Before we get into how I make this stitch, I want to quickly thank today's sponsor, Squarespace. I've been using Squarespace to build my personal website, where I share written patterns and extra resources that complement my videos. What I really love about it is how easy it is to showcase creative work. I can upload patterns, tutorials, and even set up downloads all in one place without any technical stress. The built-in creative services are also really helpful. From setting up an online store to email marketing or SEO tools, everything can be created and managed from Squarespace, so it makes the whole process feel much more approachable to launch a product or a newsletter. If you've been thinking about creating a website or portfolio, you can try Squarespace for free at squarespace.com, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/EstelSogo to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain using the code EstelSogo. First, I'm going to show you how this stitch works using a small sample, and then I will explain how I decided to construct the sweater. If you're already comfortable with basic crochet, feel free to skip ahead to the next timestamp. The stitch is called half double crochet slip stitch back loop only, and it's often used for creating a rivet knit-like texture. I'm gonna show you how I cast on the first stitches. I keep the short strand of yarn on my left, make a loop like this, and then grab the working yarn and pull it through the loop. If you pull on the short strand and it tightens around the hook, you've done it right. From here I'm going to crochet a few chains to create my base. Here's a reminder on how chains are constructed. You take yarn and pull to the front. I recommend having a close grip of every new chain. Once I have my foundation chain, I make 2 chains in the air and then I go to the 3rd chain and start working what is almost half double crochet but with a small twist. I take yarn, insert the hook into the outside chain only, pull the yarn through, so I'm left with 3 loops on the hook. Instead of taking yarn again, I pass the first loop through the other 2. It's sort of a mix between a half double crochet and a slip stitch. I'll show it again slowly. Take yarn, go through the outside chain, pull to the front so you have 3 loops on the hook, and then pass the first loop through the other 2. I work this stitch through the outside chain only on every row, without switching to the front loop at any point. And that's what creates this braided knitted looking texture. This is the stitch I'll be using for the entire sweater. To get this vertical braided pattern, the direction we crochet in is really important. Instead of starting at the bottom of the sweater, the foundation chain runs from one side of the sweater to the other. So for the body, I start with a foundation chain that's as long as the total height of the sweater. Then I keep crocheting rows until I reach the full width of the sweater. For the sleeves, it works in a similar way but rotated. I start with a foundation chain that goes from the wrist up to the armpit. Then I keep working rows upward until the piece is wide enough to fold and match the sleeve measurement. The sweater has an oversized fit, maybe a little bit too much, so I might make it a little bit smaller, and the sleeves are too long, so I have to make them a little shorter. Making this small sample makes it much easier to calculate how many chains and rows you'll need for each piece of the sweater. I really recommend making 1-2 before you start. If you have trouble finding the first stitch after chaining up, it's useful to count the stitches from above. Here we have 1, 2, and the 3rd one is our first available stitch. At first, I thought to add the ribbing separately at the end, as I did in my Astor sweater, but when I looked closely at the original sweater, I realized the ribbing is actually a continuation of the fabric. The braided texture doesn't stop. To recreate that, I decided to keep the same stitch pattern, but change the stitch height. The body of the sweater is worked in half double crochet, and the ribbing is worked in slip stitch, both working on the back loop only. Let me show you with a small example. Imagine this is the sweater body, and I will reserve some stitches for the ribbing and the rest for the sweater. If I have a foundation chain of 10 stitches, I can start from the bottom, making for example 4 slip stitches, and then continue with 6 half double crochet slip stitch back loop only across the body. On the way back, I chain 2 because I'm in the top of the sweater, so it's half double crochet, and keep working with half double crochet until I reach the ribbing section. Then I work the ribbing stitches again in slip stitches. When I finish the round, since I'm at the bottom, I will chain 1, make the ribbing section again, and continue with half double crochet. This creates a natural ribbing that gently pulls the waist in, while keeping the pattern continuous all the way through. Here's a simple diagram of what we just did. This is just a tiny sweater representation, so it's easier to visualize. Next, I will explain how many chains I used for the actual full-size sweater. I know some of you might be wondering why I'm choosing to crochet a sweater that looks knitted instead of just learning how to knit, and you might be right. But for now, I really wanted to work with what I already know. I also love how forgiving crochet is. It can easily unravel, adjust, and experiment if something doesn't work out. It feels like a gentler way to learn. Here are the general measures of the sweater. It's a small size but oversized. I will leave a size chart down on the description or in the written pattern in case you want to change it to your measures. After some testing and unraveling the pieces a few times, here are the measures of each piece needed for the sweater. These are the measures for the foundation row, and it's the same for the whole piece except for the neckline. I'm also adding the centimeters and inches because you might not have the same tension as I do, or you might use another yarn, so following the pattern by copying the chains I made for my sweater might not work for you. So better check how many chains it takes you to get to this measure and adjust it from there. Here's a preview on how I'm going to construct the sweater. Everything is made as plain rectangles without any decreases and increases. Once made, I will have to join the shoulders, close the folded sleeves, sew under the arms, and finally attach the neck ribbing. Okay, so this is how the back panel looks. It's just a simple rectangle with the ribbing worked at the bottom. I chose to make the back first so I could use it as a reference for placing the neckline on the front. If you're a complete beginner, you can also make the front panel exactly the same as this one. The neckline won't be as defined, but it will still look wearable. Better done than perfect. Here I'm marking the neckline on the back panel so I can count at what round should I start working on the neckline at the front piece. Normally, a neckline is shaped using increases and decreases, and of course you can make it like that if you already know how to make them, but since I wanted to keep this pattern as simple and accessible as possible, I will avoid them because they can easily throw off stitch counting, especially if you're still learning. I chose a simple way to shape the neckline. It won't be as refined as one made with traditional increases and decreases, but it's a gentle way to get comfortable with shaping in crochet. The goal here isn't perfection, it's creating something wearable, learning along the way and enjoying the process. At this point, I've worked the front panel up to row 36 or 25 centimeters, which is where I want the neckline to begin. At first, I tried reducing one stitch in every row to shape the neckline, but I realized it didn't line up well with the opening. After a bit of testing and trial and error, I decided on a simpler approach, shaping the neckline with 2 steps down and 2 steps back up. I will skip 3 stitches to create the steps 2 times, and then adding those stitches back in gradually. To soften the shape, instead of chaining 2 before turning my work, I'm only chaining 1. Then work 12 rows without changes. At row 13, since we started the neckline, I returned to the original stitch count by adding 3 extra chains at the end of the row, plus 1 chain up and working back. Here's how to go up again from a close view. I make 3 stitches in the air, plus 1 to work as a wall, I turn my work and continue. The ribbing remains the same as we did on the back, we are only making changes at the neckline. Remember that since we made only 1 chain up, to turn back we have to get to the 2nd stitch, not the 3rd. And now I'm back to 70 stitches and I continue until the end like this. Here's a diagram of the neck in case these instructions felt confusing. I really recommend testing it first on a small sample. It's a great way to make sure the logic makes sense before working on the full-size piece. And here's how it would be done with increases and decreases, and if you're a complete beginner, feel free to just go straight with a simple rectangle. Now I'm going to explain how I made the sleeves. Just like the body, the sleeves are worked as simple rectangles. There's no shaping with increases or decreases while crocheting. This keeps the stitch pattern consistent and makes everything much easier to follow. I start with a foundation chain that runs from the waist up to the armpit. This chain length is the total length of the sleeve. From there, I keep crocheting rows until the piece is wide enough to wrap around my arm. The ribbing is worked the same way as the body. Here I reserved the last 6 stitches along one of the edge of the rectangle and worked those stitches in slip stitch on the back loop only, while the rest of the sleeve is worked in half double crochet on the back loop, finished as a slip stitch. I'm making my sleeve shorter than the original sweater because it fits too long, but you can make it longer if you want by making a foundation chain as long as one of your favorite sweater sleeves. Now I'm going to take this project with me on a little escape to the mountains, where I'm spending a few days with friends. I love bringing something handmade along trips like this. It feels comforting to sit together after a cold day with a fire, quiet conversation, and a crochet project growing slowly in my hands. Now let's talk about the neck ribbing. Instead of crocheting it directly onto the sweater, I decided to make it as a separate piece and sew it on later. To start, I make a foundation chain that's the same height as the sweater neck ribbing. This will have to be long enough to match the neck opening. You can measure this directly around the neckline or lay the sweater flat and measure it that way. It should be slightly shorter than the opening, so it sits nicely once it's attached. The ribbing itself is worked back and forth in rows, using slip stitch through the back loop only. This creates a stretchy rivet texture that really works well for necklines. Once it's done, I fold it into a loop, sew the short ends together, and now we have all the pieces to assemble the sweater. Now that the crochet pieces are finally ready, I begin by sewing the front and back panels together at the shoulders. Next, I seam each sleeve rectangle along its long edge to form a tube. Once the sleeves are closed, I attach them to the body, aligning them with the shoulder seams. Then I sew the front and back panels together under the arms and down the sides. Finally, I add the neck ribbing to finish the sweater. I place them on the wrong sides together, so basically the good side facing you. Line up the edges with clips and use a yarn needle to sew the shoulder seams first. I like to take my time here, making sure the stitches line up nicely. I've sewn the shoulders and I'm leaving this leftover yarn here so I can use it later for the neck. Next, I attach the sleeves. I line up the center of each sleeve with a shoulder seam and pin it in place. Then I sew along the armhole, easing the fabric in as I go. After both sleeves are attached, the sweater is fully assembled and the only thing left is the neckline. To finish, I sew on the neck ribbing. I place it evenly around the neckline, pinning it in a few spots first, stretching it slightly as I go. Here you can see the little steps that form our neckline. It might look slightly angular at first, but when I gently stretch the fabric, it relaxes and smooths out, almost as if it had been shaped with traditional increases and decreases. I just finished the sweater and I can't wait any longer. Let's go straight to the reveal. After thinking for a long time about the name, I decided to call this piece the Anne Sweater. While working on it, I was rereading the first book of Anne of Green Gables, and in many ways this project started to feel connected to her. The braided texture kept reminding me of Anne's hair, and the whole process, experimenting, making mistakes and starting again, echoed her curiosity and her joy for discovering new things. To me, this sweater feels a bit like plain old and romantic Anne Shirley, but in the best possible way. Simple, sensible and practical. The kind of piece Marilla would approve of. If you'd like to make this sweater, the current version of the pattern is available for free through my newsletter. By signing up, you'll get access to it and help me test it and improve it. Any feedback, whether something felt easy, confusing, or needing adjusting, is incredibly valuable, and it will help shape the final version. Later on, I will refine the pattern and maybe release a more detailed paid version. This will be my first time making things together with you, and I'm very excited to get your feedback and see your finished sweaters. Thank you so much for being a part of this and for inspiring this sweater. See you in the next video. Adeu!